You know what? I think that you're holding out on me. I bet if I hit the right spot, I can make you scream.
What's up, movie maniacs? Horror Fiend TV, Three Corners of Horror. I am Ricky Grimes. Welcome back to another episode. Today, of course, we got the man JR. What's up, son?
So, man, another home invasion, but this one has a lot of good, cool things about it.
Right, Joe, aka Juan, or however you want to go. What's up?
Hey, what's up? Either Joe. Let's go. We can go with Joe. Among us, I'm Joe. But yes, or Juan, as some of you people may know me. This one, I like this one. I'm a big fan of home invasion movies. For me, it's probably the scariest because it's probably the most realist type of horror we can all actually experience.
Absolutely. And that means tonight we will be discussing Hush, a film by Mike Flanagan, who gave us gems like A Haunting of Hill House, Bly Manor, Oculus, can't forget that. And just recently on Netflix, he has Midnight Mass, which was actually referenced in the movie we're going to talk about. And that is, of course, Hush. This film stars Katie Siegel as Maddie, a brilliant mind and a writer who just happens to be deaf and mute at the same time. She finds herself trapped in her own home against a masked killer who is playing cat and mouse games before he eventually forces himself inside of the house to kill Maddie. Now, he has zero motive. That's all we pretty much know going into this film. JR, I'm going to go to you first. Now, Maddie is interesting. Her character is quite unique in a sense. Why don't you tell us about the character of Maddie, played by Katie Siegel?
Like you said before, Maddie is deaf and mute. And it gives us a whole different perspective into the home invasion because you have a character now that cannot call for help, and cannot listen to this guy when he shows around. So she's an author who she's writing a novel, and like most authors do, they go into seclusion so they could write in peace. Like one of the things you realize with Maddie is like, because of the fact that she's lacking being able to talk and be able to hear, a lot of the stuff in it with her, it's all about visual. Like you have one scene where she's cooking dinner, and all of a sudden there's she left the meat in the oven while she's talking to Sarah. She runs inside, and now you hear the sound of the smoke detector, but now you have the strobing lights, which plays a factor later on in the film. But a lot of this movie is like driven by the visual aspects of Maddie.
Yeah, so Joe, what do you think about the character Maddie, like her handicap and how it played into the film?
Well, I mean, it was great because it's very refreshing to see this in a horror movie. It doesn't get done that often. It's not a genre that doesn't get touched upon that often. As far as being deaf, I think one of the last ones was 2013's Avenged, where the lead was deaf, and then you also had an Orphan, which is from 2009, in which the little girl, she was deaf, which if anybody also knows, she also played Alice's daughter in Resident Evil 4. But that was what was good because it's basically you're taking away someone's senses. Like we rely on all five senses, and in this movie, your two senses and the hearing, which is really important, is taken away from you.
That reminds me too of the character Connie from The Walking Dead, where she's deaf in the zombie apocalypse and she's also mute. And in that show, she actually conveys that they use vibrations as a way to get by. Which in this film, which came out obviously before that, that's how Maddie actually got around things, which was pretty cool. And there's a scene where the killer, just to fast forward a little bit, is behind her, and obviously she can't hear him, but he makes the subtle mistake of just letting out that subtle breath, and she feels it in the back of her neck. And I'm like, oh man, come on! Like I love Maddie. You root her. I love the actress. She's amazing.
Yes.
And I didn't know she was in this movie, and I was hesitant to watch this honestly. And then when I saw she was the lead actress, I was sold, and I didn't even know Mike Flanagan had anything to do with this either until I started watching the film. When I saw the book Midnight Mass in the film, I'm like, wait a minute, I had to Google it real quick. Oh shit! But yeah, her character is awesome. She's deaf. So the premise of this film is interesting because when this film first started, there was no sound within the credits. I thought my stream was broken. I literally I seriously stopped it a couple of times. And then for some reason, I decided to fast forward it a bit until the movie started, and then there was sound. So I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. She's deaf. That's just the producers and the director just giving it the start of the film from her perspective, how she goes about her life, which is pretty cool touch. Now, talking about the premise being her deaf, Joe, you did touch about it a little bit, but if you want to elaborate a little bit more about what separates this from other slasher films of the same genre.
Well, like this is in the line of the home invasion. It kind of reminded me a little bit of The Strangers, which is one of my, at this point, favorite home invasion movies. This movie didn't have a high kill count. As you had mentioned earlier, this is a little bit of a thriller, a cat and mouse movie, which is what's great because, not all horror movies need to have a high kill count. Part of it is the cat and mouse, the bad guy, trying to catch the good guy. For me, one of the scenes that stood out in the movie that was going to stand apart from the rest was when Maddie was in her kitchen and her friend Sarah shows up and gets brutally stabbed, like killed. And Maddie can't hear anything. She doesn't know at all what's going on outside. And that's when I kind of realized that, like, we're going into something that, again, as I said, you're taking away a sense. So we're going somewhere that we're not usually taken to. This is where like the premise of the movie and how it was, what I really appreciated of it.
What are you, JR?
And for me, I thought one of the most interesting things about this film is when you have a lot of home invasion films with masked characters, you have a tendency of not seeing who's behind the mask, especially early in the film. It's usually at the end or not even at all. The fact that he willingly took off his mask in order to continue to begin to play the game of cat and mouse with her, even tapped on the window, can you read my lips? I mean, at that point, you're like, wow, this is going to be intense. This is going to be great. And like, just the fact that there's also a lot of foreshadowing right from the get-go in the beginning. Like when Sarah comes to visit Maddie, I mean, you get a shot of her playing her phone in her back pocket. Once again, I mentioned the strobe lights. I mean, you knew for some reason I was going to come into play later on in the film.
The fire alarm, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then, I just go back to that. The fact that you got to see who's behind the mask this early in the film heightened the tension because at this point he did not care because in his mind he knew you're dead regardless. I'll show
it's
you
no holds barred.
Now, for me, when I first started watching this and I seen the guy in the mask, I didn't like him at all. I was like, oh, he looks bad. Like, I know they're trying to go with the blank face Michael Myers look, or there's so many films that like The Strangers. You mentioned The Strangers, how they had the mask. This was there. Let's get a guy with a mask, put a little beanie on him, and call it a day. And I was like, oh, I just couldn't get into him at first. But when he willingly took the mask off, because that was an advantage she had in order to get out of there, because she hadn't seen his face. When he took the mask off, the whole game changed for me because it went from your typical slasher to, like Joe pointed out, a thriller. Because this guy, and when I saw the actor, I mean, I couldn't stop thinking. He looks like this guy from Wrestle Talk, Luke Owen. It's a wrestling show, right? They do a wrestling YouTube show. I just can't stop seeing this guy. But the actor is John Gallagher Jr., who was from Cloverfield, the new one. So this actor, when he shows up, I'm like, okay, he's interesting. I hate this guy because every time I see this guy, he's in something like, I don't know, not I don't hate him, but he's all the films he's been in characters I was kind of like, hold him about. But anyway, so when he took the mask off, the game changed because now it became real. It's a real person. They're not trying to do a Halloween 2.0, whatever number you get up to at this point. This turns into a real home invasion film. And at this point, you're thinking, what is his motive? Like, he killed Sarah, and then once he started banging on the door, he realized that Maddie couldn't hear anything. Now his whole intention was to mess with Maddie. He's gonna he told her too. He's like, I'm not gonna come in, not right now. I'm gonna make you wish that you're gonna be dead. You're gonna be begging me practically to come in here and finish you. And I was like, come on, like, how is I'm thinking, why is he not breaking windows? How does he not get in? But again, he doesn't want to. And I don't know what it was. Did this killer? I didn't like him at first, but once the mask came off, it became real. And at that point, that's when I was really on board with the film, and I was hooked. I was completely hooked in this film. So, Gr, you love killers. Please, what his intentions? What, from your point of view, was he just a psycho? He didn't care. Was he doing something and Sarah just ran into him and saw him and he had to take care of her? And what was up with this guy?
I mean, he was simply a hunter. I mean, everything he did was for the body count. You remember the scene where she got her hands on a crossbow?
Yes.
It was actually etched off how many he killed, and it was 13 people he killed.
Yeah.
Which you figure one of them was Sarah. So for me, he was very methodical. It was the thrill of the hunt. Like you say, he could have broken into the house anytime he wanted to. And he chose not to. He chose to constantly taunt her. When she would go to one room, he would go to another by the window. I mean, the scene where she's hiding and she thinks she has a good spot, and then he picks up Sarah's body and starts tapping out the window.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
everything
was messed up.
it was, but everything
That was messed up.
I mean, then he laid a body there. I mean, think about it. I mean, when I first saw this, it didn't cross my mind, but the second, third time I saw it, I was like, all right, he purposely left the body there.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knew eventually she was going to come out. I mean, he probably did not know that the phone was in the back pocket.
He did, because he had the phone.
Well, he had Maddie's phone.
No, that was Sarah's phone.
No, it was Maddie's. And then he found Sarah's phone because he took it out of the pocket and he showed it to her. And then you see the look on her face. She was like all upset because he taunted her with the phone. Originally, he had Maddie's phone because he broke into the house while she was on her computer, took her phone. That's when he went outside and he took a picture of her.
But there was a scene when Maddie's looking through Sarah's dead corpse for the phone. She can't find it. And then the killer comes around.
That's right,
and he shows her the phone that he had it.
Yeah,
and then that's when he grabbed and just put it back on top of her dead body.
Yeah, I mean, he was very just methodical.
Smart. He was smart too. He
knew the hunt. He enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah.
And for me, that's all he wanted to do.
Joe, did he tickle your fancy?
Well, I mean, like for me, like I've mentioned, The Strangers. This is a little bit reminiscent of The Strangers for me. As far as that, the only intention he had was to kill.
Yeah.
There was you never got to find out why. There's no backstory in this movie explaining to you why he's doing this. This random guy just pops up, kills Sarah, and then goes for Maddie. Like as you guys also have mentioned, like the one scene that stood out for me was when she was speaking to him and saying, basically, we can stop this. I haven't seen your face. You can just go, and him taking the mask off. That's when I kind of realized, well, you're fucked now. And then as far as the scene with him laying out Sarah, if we're dealing with somebody who can't hear, can't speak, so one of her senses is seeing. So laying out the body is him telling her, you're gonna at least see you're gonna die. Because he's on her one of the senses that she actually has going. So him putting her out is him letting her know, you're not gonna hear that I'm gonna kill you. You're going to see that I'm going to kill you.
At this point in the film, too, like you mentioned, Maddie, her senses, vision being one of them. Now, like I mentioned before, she's a smart. She sees things like other people can't see certain things because her senses got kicked in. I think at one point she mentioned the voices in her head. Was it her mother? Was it?
Sounded like her mother.
So, yeah. So there's one scene in particular when there's a fake out. We think Maddie is killed off. And I was pissed. I was really mad. I'm like, damn. And I love it when the bad guys win, but I didn't. I wanted her to win. I was rooting for her. It's the one thing in this film I will say: you root for the main character. You want her to survive.
Yeah.
So when that happened, and then it goes back, and that's Maddie thinking back. Okay, if I run, that's what could happen. But if I stay here, then the other voices in her head start talking her through every scenario that how she could escape or how bad it could end. So I was thinking, damn, is she crazy? But no, I just that's just the way she writes, because she's a writer and that's how she writes her stories. So her main thing was too many endings. She couldn't finish her book. So for her own story that's going on right now, there was also too many endings, too many scenarios that could go bad. And she came to the final conclusion of what to do. Now, Joe, I'm going to throw to you. What do you think about Maddie and that characterization on her part?
Well, on that, when you hear the voices, as you said, she's a horror writer. I mean, they actually do mention that she doesn't write like love stories. She's a horror writer. So the voices that she heard, it's characters that she's written, and she's trying to figure out how we're going to get out of here. And she sat there and wrote the ending of each time. Okay, if we go this way, this is how it's going to go. And because she even says, okay, no matter how many times it's going to go, there's only one ending, and that's when you realize that it had to kick in for her, that she had to get out of here. So for me, the voices in her head, I guess I never thought about it being the mom. I just kind of looked at it was just, I'm not trying to sound crazy, but my inner voice is not my actual own voice. My own inner voices are different voices to, distinguish sometimes when I got to think to myself. So that's the way I was looking at it, was Maddie used the inner voices that she uses as she's writing. And this is honestly, all of us as horror fans, what she did is we're in this situation, we go, all right, hold on. So if I go out that door, this is what's going to happen. So that was just great, just as far as showing Flanagan's ability here in writing, as far as the writer's perspective being put into the movie.
He also, Kate actually helped. Did she co-write this film, I believe?
Yes.
So she had a hand in this, and this character was very smart. And the fact that she sat there, ran through all the scenarios before just running blindly running scared to leaving the house, she thought about it, and that makes her super smart and puts her ahead of the pack as far as the type of character she was in this film, the survivor, the victim, however you want to call it. JR, what do you think about it?
Well, once again, early in the movie, you get the foreshadowing when she's sitting there with Sarah talking about the book. She mentions that her mother called it the writer's brain, and that it's any possible outcome is like a movie and playing in her head with many endings, which she actually says it's frustrating. It's a frustrating movie because it's hard to make the voices quiet. So when Sarah asks her, does his voice sound like a kid? She goes, no, it sounds like my mother. And then Sarah's response is whatever goes on in your brain, I think you're a good storyteller. So even when you're hearing her basically talk to herself, listen again, you hear her talk and you hear echo. It's almost like it's being told twice. She says it when she says something, her voice repeats it. When her voice says something, she repeats it. So for me, I thought it brought something interesting, like you said, the fact that she's witnessing her death in every decision she makes. If I go to the crawl space, oh, he knows you. Yes. You already been there. Mm-hmm. Oh, if I run this way, oh, he's gonna get you. He's gonna get you. You can't use the crossbow unless you're up close because he'll move. So everything she was breaking down to the point was, if we go to this room, this is our best fighting point. Oh, you have to do everything up close. So the fact that that scene happened and it was kind of foreshadowed in the beginning, I thought was so freaking brilliant, because she's sitting there. The fact that she's saying it's frustrating, movie, and she's sitting there looking like she's about to give up. I think it was brilliant. That was just amazing. Especially as a writer, I love that.
Yeah, well, for me, because you've seen that before in movies, but you've seen it happen once. But she went through different scenarios. So it was just great to see that sequence of different scenarios and how it could all end. But like I said, it's just for me, it just showed more that the writer of the movie put himself in the shoes of the character and wrote, "This is what I'm going to see if I'm in this situation," and it was done awesome. I one of the best sequences of the movie.
Yeah, hands down, my favorite sequence in the entire film. My only nitpick in the film, and it's my only nitpick, is and it's a nitpick. I kind of wish they utilized her inability to hear more. Meaning, I wish there was more quiet scenes with just no sound, just silence. Flanagan did say he addressed it. He said he didn't want it to be complete silence. He wanted to have some ambient noise. If you notice, there's always something going on, even when it's through her perspective. They use like an ultrasound machine, for example, for sound. I kind of wish it would just take the sound out completely and let's put ourselves in Maddie's shoes just for a moment, a split moment. That's it. Other than that, though, I think she was so smartly written because she was disabled in a sense, but she was never helpless. I never saw her as like Sarah, who had she could hear, see everything. She got smoked out easily, but Maddie was smart about it. I mean, she made mistakes, but she learned from them. And the fact that she was injured, and so was the killer, both of them were like slowly like bleeding out, and it's realistic, So now there's a race against time. You know what I'm saying? And the scene where he crushes her hand in that door. Oh
yes.
my God, her hand!
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, there's that a big kill count. This movie doesn't need it.
No,
That
not
hand
at all.
scene alone was like the crunch. And just the when you saw her face and just the way it looked, that was great makeup effect as well. That leads into the final battle. Now she's taunting him. Come on, you're a coward. Come in, finish this. Let's do it. She crawls away to her death. You would see him. He breaks through finally because he's bleeding out himself. And this final battle. Oh man, I mean, JR, tell us about this final battle.
Well, to go back to the scene real quick where he broke her hand.
Yes.
That was his trigger for her. That was the point where she realized, it's going to be either you or me. Either you come in or you stay out there. And by calling him a coward, she was trying to lure him in. Now, remember, after she did that, she went and started texting her mom. And it's ironic because if you look at the text, the top of it said ending stuff, the end. Money now, please. And then the description of the killer, I love you, mom and dad.
Oh, yeah.
And she put died fighting. While she's typing this, he's in the background trying to break that glass and he can't get in. And that's the ironic thing. He tried his best not to get in. And then one of the easiest ways to get in, you figure, is through that door. He cannot break it. So how does he break into the house? Which was, for me, one of the smartest, creative things to do. When she's in the bathroom, he comes from the ceiling down.
Yeah,
which is a scene
very slowly. That kind of remind me of a scene from Alien when the alien slowly comes down. Like that was pretty cool.
Not even that sequence, where he's like, "Oh, I could get the perfect spot to kill you. I just got to hit the." And then when he stabs in, the fact that she flips the knife, turns around, deflects his knife.
That was when he breathed on her neck.
Yeah, and that stabs him in the leg. I mean, just that sequence alone, I was like, holy crap.
So good. So good.
I mean, and it's like, I won't hog up the whole, fight scene. But once again, one of the unique aspects of the final fight scene is she couldn't hear, she couldn't talk. So what's it she does? She takes away his vision.
Yeah.
When she sprays him. I mean, that alone, I'll let Joe finish the rest of the fight scene. But the fact that she took away his number one asset to try to even out the fight was just, once again, brilliantly done. I mean, excellent scenes.
Oh yeah, the whole entire fight sequence between them, it was great. It showed that Maddie could defend her own, that she can take care of herself. Right when you got to that one scene, as you guys were talking about, when he's behind her and he's just talking. Now, you speak of the foreshadowing. All along, there's something that Maddie had said, with her not being able to hear, she picks up on the vibrations. So you have that scene. So when he's behind her, I mean, I'm literally watching it and I'm just like, fuck, like, oh no. But it's even as subtle as the vibrations were, because it's not like he was talking loud and she heard it. and she was able to turn around and basically kill him. Like that was like one of the best endings as far as, you know, you having the good guy versus the bad guy scene in there. Like I love that ending, but it was just because you all along you knew that it would what was going to save her was that vibrational, because that's what she relied on. And then it's a great scene. It's my favorite scene from the whole entire movie. But yeah, this is a really great movie.
You fucking cunt.
I loved it. One thing we forgot to mention real quick, so we could we brought it up before, was the smoke detector.
Yes.
It's extremely loud because she can't hear, so she needs to feel the vibrations.
Right.
So
it's loud, but I mean,
yes.
because I mean, I've you know, in the labs like that I've worked in, some place that I've worked at, you've had those go off, and it's not just like the hearing. You can feel it. You can actually feel it. So, you know, like that's why it was a foreshadowing of basically where you were going to go to the end.
Yeah, JR mentioned it. Like it you knew once any movie fan, when they pointed out the fact that she felt the vibrations, and Sarah she was selling it. She was selling it like, oh my God, you knew that was going to come into play, and you knew she was going to use it against the killer.
Yeah,
and it did come into play. That was cool.
It did, because she actually said it. She says, "I feel the vibrations."
Yeah. Once you knew that. But yeah, like this film here, I loved it. I thought it was almost flawless. It was short. That's what it was. Like hour and 20 minutes. It went by quick. And it, like I said, it's not horror in a sense. It's straight up. But the fact that you follow this character, you root for this character, and you really wanted to win. Like I said, I threw a fist into the air when she won and she survived. And we never talked about that poor schmuck who came in too. And
John, her boyfriend,
Sarah's boyfriend.
He got totally because the killer portrayed that he was a cop.
That was so good. That scene was good.
No, he did. And he was completely. But but again, it's
the guy was smart though. He knew.
Here's the thing. What's great about the movie is because we never knew the intention.
Nope.
But it just showed yet another level of the killer. That he was able to play off a cop, and the boyfriend just completely believe it, and then ends up getting killed by him.
Well, Maddie fucked him over though.
But not only that,
unintentionally.
That's the one scene where the killer was the most relaxed. Where
he was.
He totally took over. Where he stabbed John in the throat, and then as John fought back, he literally died.
Oh yeah, he said it. He was a big.
And he goes, "Yeah, you think I was going to fight fair? I mean, look at you. You're a big guy."
Yeah. I love that.
He goes, "What should I do with her?" Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, he's having a conversation with the dead John. I mean, great killer.
Yeah, great. Killer. I loved it. JR, so what do you rate this film? 1 to 5. Your final closing thoughts on this film?
All right, for me, like I said, it was very creative. It was very different from a lot of home invasion movies. The fact that you had a disabled character being the protagonist, being the hero, surviving, and just the whole. I mean, the way it was written, I think, like you said, it was a short movie. Didn't need to be longer. It was perfect timing. I mean, not one scene felt wasted. It was always the tension was always there. I'm going to rate this one high. I'm going to rate it 4 out of 5. I mean, it's one of the best. The Strangers is still going to be over this one, but it's one of the best home invasion movies that are out there right now.
Joey,
I was gonna say, if you're about to put it over The Strangers, we're gonna have a problem.
Listen, spoilers. I'm gonna put this over The Strangers.
No, you better not. No. And you better watch The Strangers again.
Listen, I'm not calling it a better movie. I'm saying me as a personal favorite. Strangers was good, but it's a good film for what it was, for its type. Hush, you thought it was going to start like that, but it went in a completely fresh, original direction, and that's why.
All right, so maybe we don't equate them the same then.
All right.
It's the home invasion, but two separate genres. All right. But no, I really enjoyed the movie myself. I love Mike Flanagan. I mean, you mentioned some of the stuff he's done. I mean, he did a great job with Gerald's Game. It's also available on Netflix.
He did that.
And that's not. And after he did Gerald's Game, he ended up doing Dr. Sleep and got Stephen King's thumbs up for Dr. Sleep also.
He's a big King fan.
I mean, and then again, also on Netflix, you've got he did The Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor.
Mm-hmm.
So basically anything he's done, there's not anything that he's done that I have not liked. And I said the body count wasn't high in this movie, which is what made it a great movie, because you don't necessarily need to have a whole bunch of kills to make a great horror movie, scary movie. The cat and mouse is what made this movie. For me, again, I'm going to give it a 3.5. It still was good. I'm a little bit more critical on my stuff. 4s and 5s, they fall under different things for this genre. And because The Strangers would get a 4 from me is the only reason that this movie would get a 3.5 from me.
That's awesome. For me, like I said, I'm going 4.5. Not perfect. Like I said, I kind of wish they would have just jumped into the pool a little bit more with showing her like silence, just giving us more pure silence. Not the whole movie, obviously, but certain scenes. But it's a short runtime, very little cast in it. There's like almost no dialogue. There's like 15 minutes of dialogue total, something like that in this film, because obviously she don't speak. The killer was fresh. He felt real. He wasn't the most memorable guy. He ain't gonna be like, no horror icon, but he just felt real. And the fact that you didn't know why he was doing what he was doing made it even better, because you don't always have to know that. I could have a different way of seeing it. JR could, Joe could, anyone could. And I think that's very important in films. And it's very important for discussion. Everyone has their own viewpoint on it. Now, I'm not going to debate it. Like Joe said, Strangers was higher for him. I loved Strangers. But the only reason why I like this one as a personal favorite was because of the fact that it felt a little bit more refreshing. They knew they can't do another Strangers, Halloween, Purge, anything like that. They needed something different. And it's Flanagan. He's going to bring you something fresh. And I love, like, him and Siegel are a perfect combo. 4.5 for me. JR, why don't you tell us, the fans and everyone who is watching, please smash that like button, subscribe. JR, take us home. What's next on Horror Fiend TV?
So, being that the holidays are around the corner and we are in December, we're going to watch A Christmas Horror Story. It is an anthology for everyone. It has every single thing as a horror movie fan that you will simply love. I mean, it's different, it's fresh, it's Christmas, and one thing, has William Shatner. Who doesn't love William Shatner?
You like William Shatner, Joe?
Oh, I love William Shatner. Hello. This is the face of Michael Myers.
Yes.
Oh no, but I do love Star Trek. I mean, I am.
See, when I think of Shatner, I think of Twilight Zone.
Oh, see, I think that is another, because actually, didn't that then John Lithgow redid it for the movie?
Mm-hmm.
The Gremlins on the plane.
He is good in this movie. He is funny, and you will like it. Christmas Horror Story.
Awesome. Well, I am Ricky Grimes. That's JR. That's Joe in the Patriot shirt. This is Horror Fiend TV, 3 Corners of Horror. Join us next week. Thank you. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time. Peace.
See ya.